The following is a production of the University of Minnesota.
There's several options for managing Impatiens downy mildew in the landscape. To begin with, you want to start out with healthy plants that are disease-free. We know that Impatiens downy mildew does not move on seed. So starting plants from seed is a great way to start out with clean plants. However, plants do need to be protected in the nursery and the garden center while they're being produced, as it is possible for the infection to come in at that stage. We also know that plants produced as cuttings from an infected plant will be carrying the pathogen even if they're not immediately showing symptoms of the disease. So it's important to start out with clean plants and talk to the nursery and the garden center to determine if they have a regular spray program to protect their standard impatiens from Impatiens downy mildew. In addition, in a landscape bed like this one that has a history of Impatiens downy mildew, we do not recommend planting standard Impatiens into these beds again. This is because we do suspect those oospores will survive in the soil and start new infections, even if you're starting out with clean plant material in the following season. So once a bed is infected, it's best to stay away from standard Impatiens. And other alternatives for shade beds would include Impatiens hawkerii, so the New Guinea Impatiens, coleus, begonia, caladium, or any other plant that will do well in the particular environmental conditions. Remember, Impatiens downy mildew is specific to only some species of Impatiens, so switching to a different genus of plants is a good alternative for that area. If you do put clean plants into a bed with no history of Impatiens downy mildew, it is possible for the disease to come into the bed during the season through wind-blown spores. Remember that fluffy white growth that occurs on the lower surface of the leaf? Those are full of sporangia, which are easily spread by splashing water as well as carried on moist air currents. And so healthy plants can become infected simply through contact in the environment, through splashing water, or through blowing wind. And once you start to see symptoms, hopefully you would catch it before it gets to this stage, but you'd be watching your plants for infection where you're starting to get this leggy growth and you see the sporulation under the leaves. The best thing to do is to come in and remove these plants completely from the bed. And that includes the roots as well as any plant debris like fallen leaves or fallen blossoms, because it's within the plant debris that those long-term resting structures, the oospores, form. So as a gardener, you want to get this material out of there to reduce the amount of pathogen that ends up in the soil and in that plant debris. Bag it and take it out, and hopefully that'll reduce the spread to other plants in the bed, but you'll want to keep an eye on that bed and you may end up pulling out several plants from that point. There are several fungicides that are available that will protect plants from Impatiens downy mildew. Please look online at the University of Minnesota Extension webpage under Garden Flower Diseases, and you'll find recommendations for fungicide sprays both in the landscape as well as in the nursery to protect plants from Impatiens downy mildew. We do recommend that home gardeners who want to use fungicides to protect their plants from Impatiens downy mildew contract with a landscape professional to apply fungicides. This is because most of the fungicides available to a home gardener are ineffective against Impatiens downy mildew. Remember, Impatiens downy mildew is caused by a water mold. It's not a true fungus. So not all fungicides that we have are effective against this pathogen. There's only a specific group that will work against Impatiens downy mildew. When using fungicides to protect plants from Impatiens downy mildew, it's important to rotate between different fungicide families. We know that the Impatiens downy mildew pathogen in Europe already has resistance to certain types of fungicide. Therefore, it's very important that we rotate fungicides and use tank mixes to make sure that the pathogen here in the United States does not develop resistance to any of the fungicides effective against Impatiens downy mildew. We also know the fungicides that affect Impatiens downy mildew are protective and preventative. So while they're very effective if they're applied to the plant before infection occurs, there's very little control observed if the disease is already present in the bed. If the disease is already there, it's best to pull it out. If you still have healthy plants, you can spray to protect them. But realistically, if you want to be using fungicides to protect plants against Impatiens downy mildew, you need to start out with clean plants and protect them throughout the growing season.